of your application, be independently owned and operated, and agree to comply with the requirements that are set by the Office of Small Business Opportunity. We have an online application. Our website is richlandcountysc.gov/OSBO, and our phone number is area code 803-576-1540. Back to you, Erica.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Also, just to let everybody know, we are live streaming on the Richland County YouTube channel, just to let you know. And also, we want this to be a really, really active group. So if you look on the side, there's a chat box. So if you have any questions, we have Ms. Tara, who's also going to be co-hosting with us. We'll monitor all your questions and make sure Dr. Cummings will answer your questions. Also, if you click on your participant emoji, you will see a raised hand. So if you have any questions or anything, just raise your hand and Tara will actually get to you or ask you your questions or send you a question privately. So like I said, we want this to be a very, very interactive group. So from that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Erica. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I get the honor of introducing our presenter, and I truly do mean honor. When we had a chance to talk with her, I was in tears, literally. I didn't know how much help I really did need because of this over thing. And she wasn't there to counsel me. She was just like, giving us information. I was so, my goodness, I was so impressed, and like, oh God, this is undercover. I didn't realize this. So what I'm here to tell you is the thing she loves most is the active participation. And trust and believe me, once you hear this young lady speak, then you are going to participate. Like, oh, whoa, what is this emotion coming up out of me? I didn't know this was that. I thought I was doing good and handling business as usual and doing what I need to do in my profession. But there are those other things that are hitting or subdued that you're going to go on this journey, and trust and believe me, you will definitely participate in the conversation. Dr. Cummings, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She has an amazing history, very well educated. There are so many degrees that she holds and licenses that she holds. I'm only able to describe a few of them. As a matter of fact, I asked her if I could get a vowel or something with some of those acronyms. So Dr. Cummings is the owner of the Stairway Counseling Services and Future Generation Counseling and Training. And Tara Holman is her business manager, who is going to be our co-host, and I'll tell you a little bit about that amazing young lady as well. For the past 19 years, Dr. Cummings has worked in a variety of clinical settings in counseling field, residential, inpatient hospitalization, outpatient care. She's an adjunct instructor for undergraduate and graduate level counseling and psychology courses. She has a doctorate degree with honors and distinction from Human Services with specialization in counseling studies, and she holds this degree from Acapella University. Now, just a little bit about our co-host. This young lady is so amazing too, man. I wasn't in tears, but I was on her journey as we talked about what she did. Tara Holman is the director of the education, let me see. I'm sorry, guys. The director of talent of the Education Talent Search ETS TRIO program at Midlands Technical College in Columbia. She received her bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of South Carolina and holds a master's degree in counseling and psychology from Troy University. She has worked in many conferences and events and is actively involved in the plethora of the TRIO and mental health activities on the state side, regional, and national levels. Once again, she is also the business manager of Dr. Cheryl Cummings of Stairway Counseling Services. Dr. Cummings.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you to Miss Erica and the staff at the Office of Small Business Opportunity in Richland County. Y'all, I like they said, I love participation. So I hope that you will be able to utilize this chat feature. I'll stop in our presentation to give Ms. Tara an opportunity to field some of those questions to me so we can get those questions answered. So again, thank you for coming. It may be raining in your area. When I got up this morning, it was raining. We welcome the rain, but we know even though there's rain, there is sunshine at the end of the day, right? So we thank God for the sunshine. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And so give me a thumbs up in the chat box right now if you can see my screen. Make sure everybody can see. Wonderful. Yes, yes. All right. So we're gonna rock and roll. So Miss Michelle Rosenthal gave you an opportunity just to know a little bit about me. And, you know, I love counseling. I love mental health. I feel like this has been a field that I've been chosen to do. Been doing it for almost 20 years now. And what better way for me to be able to serve my life than to speak to people who are dealing with mental health problems, mental health challenges, crisis. Next to our physical health, our mental health is the most important thing that we need to take care of on a monthly, daily basis. You know, if you think about it, most of us go to our primary care doctor at least once a year to have a physical or have a checkup. But just kind of think to yourself, how often do you go and receive help for your mind, your spirit, your soul, your emotions? A lot of us carry a lot of pain, hurt, and trauma from our childhood and our past, and those things don't go away if we don't seek the appropriate help and appropriate attention. But today we're going to specifically talk about mental health as it relates to disaster, and it's kind of twofold. I'm going to take a second to just have you put in the chat box for me, who are you? Tell me who you are. Tell me what your career is. Tell me your business name. If you want to drop your business name in the chat box, just tell me a little bit about who you are. I'm going to take a few minutes. And Ms. Tara, if you could just call out those businesses or those positions that our audience members hold today.
Okay. Dr. Cummins, we have Billy Jones, South Carolina Firefighter Assistance Program with the South Carolina Fire Academy.
Okay.
We have Mr. Chris Kiefer, Department Director. We have John Brown, Executive Director at Vital Connections of the Midlands.
I hear lots of great organization, business owners, executive directors. All right, so just keep those names and those positions coming. I see them popping up. We'll take a few more, Ms. Tara, and then we're gonna move on.
Okay, we have Khadijah. She's a counselor at Vocational Rehabilitation. We have a psychiatric nurse on the line.
Wonderful.
Clarissa's Kitchen and Catering. We have a mental health specialist.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it sounds like we have a wide variety of individuals from different organizations and different positions, all of which you will be able to take this information and utilize it for your everyday personal life, professional life, church life, whatever life you have. You'll be able to utilize this information on today. So here's our objectives. We are going to take a few minutes and we're going to define mental illness. I'll go over some brief information on common mental health disorders. We're going to discuss suicide-related issues because right now, especially with the pandemic that we're going through with, this is a very traumatic time for a lot of individuals, and people are having a very difficult time coping. And so what we've been seeing is that there's a rise in suicide related cases and issues. We're also going to take a few minutes to talk about confronting those barriers of mental health, and how do we confront those barriers so we can stay mentally healthy and well during a disaster and basically during every day of our life. So I want you to take a few minutes and think about, what would you do if you had a family member, loved one, coworker, employee come in with these individual outlying physical problems? What would you do? So if they had asthma or diabetes or food allergies and they were at work and they were having an exacerbation of these symptoms, what would you do? So if you think to yourself, you would kind of readily know that you need to seek, right, medical attention for them because these are physical health problems. But what if your coworker, or family, or loved one was experiencing severe depression? What would you do about that? A, would you recognize what the signs and symptoms are of a person who is experiencing severe depression? And if they are, do you know how to be able to handle a person who's dealing with depression? How would you go about trying to get them help or get treatment? So I'm hoping all of you kind of thought to yourself, my strategies for helping an individual with physical health problems may be a little bit different than helping depression, because maybe I don't know what the signs and symptoms are of depression. We're just talking about depression, but there's a wide variety of mental health issues. So just kind of think about, so if my loved one or my coworker or was experiencing depression or any other mental health problem, what could I do? How could I help? The first thing we need to do is be able to recognize what those signs and symptoms are. So I put in this slide because I want to take a few minutes to show you that many times there is an overlap of symptoms between someone who is experiencing a physical illness and someone who's experiencing a mental health problem. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see anxiety, and these are just kind of some general symptoms. They're not inclusive, about a person who is having a panic attack or who may be experiencing anxiety. And so we have symptoms of rapid heart rate, feelings of impending doom, being out of control, or having some abdominal cramping. Then we have on the right-hand side of your screen, symptoms as it relates to COVID. Again, this is not all inclusive, but these are some of the major symptoms, which is fever, dry cough, trouble breathing, and extreme fatigue. So, you know, throughout your daily life, you've already been able to distinguish what physical health problems may look like, but you may not be as aware of what mental health problems look like. But where we want to kind of talk about and see is that right here in this orange box, there's an overlapping of symptoms, meaning that it's going to be difficult to tell whether a person is experiencing a mental health problem or whether they have, in this case, COVID-19 or a physical health problem. So the way that we begin to educate ourselves is, number one, attending seminars like this, but number two, making sure that we become more versed in being able to know what mental health problems look like or mental health disorders look like. So why should we focus on mental health problems? What are some of your thoughts? You can put it in the chat box. Why should we focus on mental health disorders? Why do you think it's important?
Because it affects everyone.
Absolutely, it affects everyone.
Because it's an important part of wellness and overall health.
Absolutely, thank you.
The symptoms are hard to recognize, often until it's too late.
Absolutely, it is very hard to recognize until it's too late.
They're not easily seen and is important to well-being.
Absolutely. Y'all are rocking and rolling this morning. So yeah, so they're common, they're not easily recognized. They can impact all facets of our life to include personal, family, work, and financial areas. One of the things that I began to really understand once I became in private practice is the amount of, I guess, harm or cause or productivity that is lost as a result of individuals experiencing mental health problems. It really impacts our business world, our ability to be able to communicate with our coworkers, and our ability just overall to be able to function in daily life. So we also know that, particularly right now, that disasters and other traumatic events can increase or exacerbate mental health symptoms. And this is not just COVID related. This is hurricanes, earthquakes, you know, the violence that we're seeing around our country, all of these traumatic events that are happening. Individuals are very, very susceptible to what is going on, and as a result can develop mental health symptoms or problems as a result. And for those who may be already diagnosed with a mental health problem, it could exacerbate their symptoms. So in this presentation today, I'm going to throw in a little bit of information about adolescents as well, even though we are all adults and we focus mostly in the adult world. Some of us may have children or loved ones who are adolescents. So I'm going to throw just a little bit of information about adolescents as well. So adolescents with mental health and emotional problems are more likely to experience these range of issues. So we can see them have any type of social or emotional problems. For example, low self-esteem or poor social skills. They may be at higher risk for developing any type of health risk that includes drug use or abuse, unwanted pregnancies. They can develop higher rates of HIV and STDs if they have mental health and emotional problems. And then there's a lot of restricted opportunities that individuals who are living with mental health problems may have, such as low academic achievement, low high school graduation rate, and fewer employment opportunities. But in particular for adults, these are some of the health problems, mental health problems. If adults have them, this is how it impacts them. They may have or be more susceptible to chronic disease. They may develop a substance use disorder or experience poverty or homelessness. They are very much susceptible to possibly incarceration, disability and lost wages, and lower productivity at work. So when we're talking about mental health problems, I want individuals and you guys to know that everybody who has a mental health problem may not be impacted in this way. There is a wide spectrum as it relates to mental health problems. Some mental health problems can be a very mild case where an individual may not need to seek treatment for it, all the way to very severe and may have to be hospitalized. So I want to give some statistics on children and adolescents who may have mental health disorders. And as you can see, again, mental health problems are very common among everyone, whether you're an adult or a child. At least 12 million children under the age of 18 have a mental health problem, which indicates that about 1 in 5 youth at any given point in time may have a mental health problem. As many as 1 in 33 children may be depressed, and 1 in 8 adolescents. So as you can see, it's a little bit more common in the adolescent years. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for teenagers between the ages of 15 and 24 years old, and the sixth leading cause of death for children between 5 and 15 years old. And when I read this statistic, I was like, I can't even fathom, you know, a 5 or a 6-year-old completing suicide or contemplating suicide. But there are documented cases of children that young who has completed suicide. When we look at the statistics on adults with mental illness, we find that 43.8 million adults experience mental illness in any given 1 year. So that means it's about 1 in 5 adults. So if you have about 5 people in the room, it's almost a guarantee, according to statistics, that at least one of those individuals have experienced a mental health problem or a disorder. 1 in 25 individuals, which is about 10 million people, live with what we consider as a serious mental health problem or disorder. When we look at serious mental health problems and disorders, we categorize that in the clinical field as an individual who may have a significant bipolar case, schizophrenia, psychosis. Some of the diagnoses are severe and persistent, what we call severe and persistent mental illness. I don't want anybody to think that depression or anxiety can't be serious or severe, because it very well can, depending on how much it impacts your life. About 1/2 of all chronic mental illnesses begin about at age 14. And about 3/4, I gotta move my little screen right here, about 3/4 by the age of 24. So when we talk about co-occurring mental health problems, that is mental health problems and addiction or substance use problems occurring at the same time. And so we have about 10.2 million individuals in this country that are living with having an addiction problem and a mental health problem at any given one time. For individuals who may be in the military or who work with military personnel, about 30% of active duty and reserve military personnel have a mental health condition that requires treatment. And about 730,000 of those men and women who are graciously serving our country may experience post-traumatic stress disorder, major depression, or some other type of mental health problem. And the Veterans Administration, in my last check on their statistics, reported that about 22 veterans die by suicide each year. So we're going to stop and take some questions, because I know there's always some questions as it relates to the statistics. Ms. Tara?
The first question is, are the statistics national ones?
Yes, the statistics are national statistics. Most of my statistics that you see today are gathered by the CDC and from NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. So yes, they are national statistics. Keep that question. Ms. Tara is going to take all questions for me and fill them on a sheet of paper, and we'll send you out a fact sheet. So I'll specifically answer each question for you. I want the questions to keep coming though, but I'll answer each question for you. And then I'll also send a link of where you can get more information about your specific question.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ms. Tara?
One more. Do
Okay.
you know how it works with the mental health problems causing increased risk of HIV/AIDS and other STDs?
Yes. So the way that it works, what individuals say in that area is that they're more susceptible to depression and anxiety and some of the other mental health problems. So that's why we see a correlation between living with a severe physical illness like HIV/AIDS. It could be diabetes. It could be high blood pressure, MS, or some of the other more chronic medical conditions. So those individuals tend to experience a higher rate of depression and anxiety. So they co-occur together.
Thanks,
All right.
that's all right now.
Okay, thank you. So in addition, we know that mental health matters. And what I wanted to do in this particular slide is give a breakdown of, even though we know that in the other two slides that mental health is a very common problem, there's not a whole lot of people that are actually getting treatment. Matter of fact, statistics show about 43% of those individuals are getting treatment. But we're talking about the numbers being in probably at least about 70% or a little bit higher of individuals who are actually having mental health problems or symptoms. And think about those individuals who aren't even diagnosed formally yet, but may be experiencing problems. So there's not a whole lot of people who are receiving treatment or getting treatment in any given 1 year. We also have in this slide as well a breakdown of adults with mental health disorders who received treatment or counseling in the past. And it gives a breakdown according to race and culture. And so you can see there that there are some specific races and cultures that are receiving treatment a little bit more than other cultures, which is why we need to continue to advocate. We need to continue to spread the word that therapy can save lives and that people need therapy and counseling. We'll talk about stigma in a little bit later as well. So exactly what is mental illness? So mental illness is a condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, or mood. Such conditions may affect a person's ability to relate to each other or relate to other people and function on a daily basis. And each person who have a mental illness may not have the same symptoms or may not experience things the same, even though they have the same diagnosis. A mental health condition isn't the result of one event. So it's multiple things that a person can be exposed to that may cause them to have a mental health problem or a mental health illness. This includes genetics or hereditary, in their environment or lifestyle can influence whether someone develops a mental health problem or not. It can be a stressful job, a stressful home life. Right now, we're stressed about the things that we see going on in the country. So all of these things can make a person more susceptible to developing a mental health problem. So these are just some categories of mental health disorders. Now, I know we're not trying to make you mental health clinicians today, and we're really just trying to get information out to you about mental health. But this book right here is the DSM-5. It's the clinical book that most professionals use, and it's about 1,000 pages. And in this book is all kinds of categories that you see listed that categorize mental health problems. But the key is not to know the book. For us common everyday people, the key is to notice the signs and symptoms. We need to be able to recognize what a person is dealing with. How do I know a person is having anxiety? How do I know a person is having depression? Just like we know if a person has a cold or has the flu or has a stomach ache, you know, we need to be able to recognize what these signs and symptoms are very readily. So some of the disorders that you may have commonly heard about as it relates to mental health problems is ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, any of the substance-related disorders you probably have heard about. Under our trauma-related disorders, PTSD is a very common term that people hear about. You may have heard about bipolar. I know bipolar is one of those terms that gets thrown out there and associated and attached with everything. So you may have heard about bipolar 1 or 2 disorder. Schizophrenia, personality disorders, you may have heard more so probably narcissistic personality disorder. Borderline personality disorders talked about a whole lot when it comes down to some of the movies that you watch. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Girl Interrupted, some of those movies indicate women with borderline personality issues, and oppositional defiant disorder. So before we specifically highlight a couple of these disorders, Ms. Tara, do we have any questions from the audience?
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna highlight for this particular training anxiety. We're gonna talk a little bit about anxiety. We're gonna talk about social anxiety or social phobia, major depression disorder. We're going to talk about PTSD, and we're going to also highlight suicide. So what is generalized anxiety disorder? It is a person who is living with extreme worry or feeling very nervous about a lot of things, even when there's little or no reason to worry about them. People with generalized anxiety disorder find it very difficult to control their anxiety and stay focused on their daily tasks. Now, you know, growing up back in the day, we didn't have a official professional term for generalized anxiety disorder, but in my household and my culture, it was bad nerves. You had bad nerves. You worried all the time. You might have heard grandma say, I need to take my nerve pill. So it was an individual who was experiencing a lot of worry, a lot of frustration, even though it may not have been things to worry about, but they still had those symptoms to feel worry. So when we look at signs and symptoms, I'm going to take a few minutes just for you to look through this list. So it could be any combination of these signs and symptoms that a person may have anxiety. Worrying about everyday life or everyday things in life, having trouble controlling their worries or feeling very nervous or very anxious, knowing that they may worry a little bit much more than what they should, having trouble relaxing or just feeling restless all the time. Maybe they're having a hard time concentrating or they're very easily startled. They can have trouble falling asleep and feeling tired all the time or have some unexplained headaches or pains. A lot of times people don't know that anxiety can affect your digestive system, you know, your inability to swallow, you're having a hard time swallowing, or you may feel irritable and on edge, maybe having to go to the bathroom a lot. And again, some of these disorders may look a little differently in children. Children you may see having a lot of problems in school or sports, or they're shutting down. They may not want to talk a lot, or they may be extremely irritable. So as we look at social anxiety, one of the things that I wanted to highlight in talking about social anxiety is that we are living in the age of Zoom now, thanks to COVID-19. And so there's a lot of individuals who may have a hard time participating and interacting on Zoom calls and Zoom activities or any type of virtual activities. And it may not be necessarily that, they're not well versed in how to use these new technology features. They may be dealing with social anxiety. This is a very persistent and intense fear of being watched or judged by others. Again, it can affect your everyday life, and it makes it hard to make friends or keep friends or even participate in work activities, especially if your work activities are to participate in things like this in Zoom, or to participate and greet customers or deal with your customers on a daily basis. So these are some of the areas that we see that a person who's living with social anxiety, that it can be very difficult for them to participate and engage in. So some of the signs and symptoms of social anxiety can be very similar to generalized anxiety disorder or an anxiety disorder, which is the blushing, sweating, trembling, rapid heart rate, feeling nauseous or sick to your stomach, making little or no eye contact, or speaking overly soft. I think a lot of times individuals with social anxiety are perceived as being antisocial, but that's not really the case. It's not that they're antisocial, it's just that they have a very difficult time being able to communicate with other people. So what is panic disorder? So panic disorder is another word for panic attacks. A person with panic disorder may become very discouraged or feel ashamed because he or she may not be able to carry out what is considered their normal daily activities, such as working or going to the grocery store or going to school. Panic disorder can start in very late teens, all the way up into early adulthood. And we also have seen a very rapid increase of panic disorder and panic attacks since this pandemic has happened with COVID-19. Again, we need to know that panic disorder does not last long, and that it is definitely characterized by a fear of a disaster happening or a fear of losing control. Sometimes people have panic attacks when there is no real danger around, but because they have heard about all of these things that are going on, it makes their anxiety go through the roof, and as a result, their physical body starts to react, and they may end up having a panic attack. Panic attacks can occur at any given time, and people who have or live with panic attacks or panic disorder often worry about the possibility of having another attack. Any questions about anxiety related disorders before we move on to talk about depression?
Yes. Would someone that has social anxiety have all of those symptoms or just most of them?
They will just have some symptoms, not all of them. When we look at, I want to go back to social anxiety. So, in order to be diagnosed, of course, you need to go to a professional to be diagnosed. But if you have any of these symptoms and they're happening on an ongoing basis, and more often than not, if they're affecting and impacting your daily life and your daily work, any of these symptoms are cause for concern. So if you're having these symptoms, or you know someone who's having these symptoms, I encourage you to make sure that you get the appropriate professional help. And we'll talk about getting appropriate professional help today.
Thank you. Is there any medication that can help control anxiety?
There is. There are several types of medications that can help control anxiety. One of the more popular medications that doctors used in the past was Xanax. A lot of people used to take Xanax or Klonopin as well to control their anxiety. Some antidepressants are also used to help control anxiety. But one of the key things that I want to talk about with medication is that because Xanax and some of the other anti-anxiety medications are so habit forming, you can get very easily addicted to it. doctors are not as willing to prescribe those medications. They're going to try to find some other type of medication to help with your anxiety or encourage you to seek counseling. There's a lot of techniques that we can use in counseling that will help individuals manage their anxiety. As a clinician in private practice, I would tell you my first go-to is not medication for my clients. I always try to work with them through therapy and through different types of techniques to help them manage their depression, anxiety, or whatever their disorder is. The only time I myself would probably recommend for a person to take medication is if their symptoms are significantly and severely impacting their daily lives.
Okay. Dr. Cummins, how can someone encourage a friend or a coworker to seek professional help?
We're actually going to talk about, say that question, Ms. Hare, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We're going to talk about how to voice your concern and how to encourage those persons to seek appropriate professional help.
Okay, thanks. That's all at this time.
Okay. All right. So when we're looking at depression, depression is common, but a very serious mood disorder. It causes severe symptoms that affect how a person may feel and think and handle daily activities such as sleeping, eating, and working. The last time that I was looking at statistics, depression and anxiety were the top two disorders that employers missed work for. Either they were late for work, either they were missing a lot of time at work. The depression and anxiety symptoms that they were grappling with or dealing with really impacted their overall daily functioning at work and their ability to work and carry out those duties at work. So I'm getting ready to show you these symptoms, and the symptoms for depression has to be present for at least 2 weeks. But we're not trying to diagnose anybody here. Anytime you see any combination of these signs and symptoms that I talk about today, and it's very concerning for you, please make sure that you reach out to your primary care doctor or reach out to a therapist to at least start the process of assessment and diagnose to see if you have depression. And because depression is common, I think it's also important for us to know that at some point in time, all of us has probably experienced depression type symptoms at some juncture of our life. It may not have been chronic or severe to the point that we needed to seek appropriate professional help, but it was very troublesome and it's very worrisome. For the most part, a lot of depression symptoms will resolve itself on its own, but if you feel that they're lingering, and again, if they become very problematic to the point that it's affecting your life, then it's very much recommended that you seek help for it. So the signs and symptoms of depression includes being persistently sad, anxious, or having a type of empty mood, feeling hopelessness or pessimism, irritability. Maybe you have some feelings of guilt, worthlessness, or helplessness, loss of interest or pleasure in activities or hobbies. A lot of people say, you know what, I used to sew or I used to knit, but I just have found that I don't enjoy that anymore. Decreased energy or fatigue, moving or talking more slowly, feeling restless or having trouble sitting still. Maybe you're having trouble concentrating or remembering or making decisions. Difficulty sleeping. That's one of the number one signs that we look at when we're looking at individuals who may have depression. Maybe they're sleeping too much. Maybe they're not sleeping, completely through the night. Maybe they're oversleeping, sleeping, large amounts of time during the day. You may have some appetite or weight changes, increase in weight gain, decrease in weight gain, or decrease in weight. Maybe thoughts of suicide or suicidal attempts is also commonly associated with depression, or even having severe aches and pains, headaches, or cramps is also, even if you go and have your doctor treat you for that, but you still feel like that you're still having these physical health problems, those could be linked to depression symptoms. Depression can begin at any age. It typically starts, though we begin to see it in adolescence, and it also can begin in adulthood as well. And we also need to know that depression can co-occur with a number of medical problems such as diabetes or heart disease or cancer, and can sometimes worsen when those physical health problems are worsening as well. As it relates to disaster and trauma, we see that a lot of people developed a lot of depression symptoms during the pandemic that we're in, because we had a very rapid shift in the way that we were doing life, right? We couldn't really have our normal routine or go through our normal routine. So we had a lot of rapid shift in depression type symptoms. Depression symptoms look a little different in teenagers. As it relates to teenagers, what we see is some of the same things that we've talked about before, but we also see teenagers, their grades may be dropping. They may have a loss in pleasure of activities and hobbies and things like that. We also see them also having a lot more physical health problems, such as headaches, cramps, or pain. One of the things I want to highlight too about depression as it relates to the pandemic that we're living in is that a lot of people are spending a lot more time alone and withdrawing from families or friends because we're isolated a little bit more. So make sure that you're checking on your family members and your loved ones, even if it's through telephone calls, text messages, if it's through Zoom meetings, any type of virtual outlet. Make sure that you're checking on people that you love. Make sure you're checking on your coworkers and your employees to make sure that they're okay, because people do deal with depression in silence. I think it's a silent killer. A lot of people aren't willing to just, come out and say, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. So make sure that you're checking on your loved ones and your coworkers and your employees as well. PTSD is a very common illness and it's a trauma-related illness that people occur when a natural disaster happens or when a traumatic event happens. People often develop this after experiencing what they consider as a dangerous event, a shocking event, or a scary event. Not everyone who experience a traumatic event or experience a disaster will develop PTSD, but they may have some of the signs and symptoms of trauma-related symptoms. Most people will recover naturally, but we have some individuals who don't recover naturally and may need, again, some type of help or treatment to be able to live with those symptoms of PTSD or those signs and symptoms of PTSD. So some signs and symptoms of PTSD is flashbacks or reliving the trauma over and over. This includes physical symptoms like heart racing or sweating. They may have nightmares or bad dreams, frightening thoughts. They may often try to stay away from places, events, or objects that reminds them of the experience. Avoiding thoughts and feelings related to the traumatic event. They may be on edge or be easily startled. They may also lose interest in different activities that they may get involved in. Again, maybe having trouble sleeping or having angry outbursts. They may look at the world very negative, or they may have distorted feelings of guilt or blame. A lot of times when we hear the term PTSD, people think that that's related to individuals who are in the military who served our country, but anyone can develop PTSD symptoms. There's a lot of people right now who are developing PTSD symptoms as a result of this pandemic, especially those who may have had a loved one to be significantly impacted by COVID-19. Or again, just watching what we are watching on the news on a daily basis as it relates to the numbers and the statistics and how grappling COVID-19 is. So children and teens may have a few different symptoms as it relates to trauma. We may see them wetting the bed even after having learned how to use the toilet, and this goes way well into adolescence or early teen years, forgetting how or being unable to talk, acting out the scary event during playtime, that's particularly for the younger children, being unusually clingy to a parent or another adult, feelings of guilt or revenge, or being disruptive, disrespectful, or destructive. So we're going to take a few minutes just to filter some questions. Ms. Tara, do we have any questions as it relates to trauma or depression?
Yes. Could PTSD symptoms happen from sexual assault events?
Absolutely. Sexual assault events, we see individuals who have been sexually assaulted have very high rates of PTSD, as well as depression and anxiety as well. So yes.
That's all.
Okay, so in talking about PTSD too, again, understand that when we're looking at trauma, anything can constitute as trauma. Trauma looks very different to a lot of individuals, but sexual assault, car accidents, natural disasters, hurricanes, any of those major events, a person can develop PTSD from, but they can also develop PTSD from, you know, just other life events that were very significant to them, that was very troubling to them as well. So suicide is a very major public health concern. We hear somewhat a little bit about it in the news, but the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of people taking their lives on a daily basis. About 40,000 people die by suicide each year in the United States, and it's the 10th leading cause of death overall. Suicide is complicated, it's tragic, but it's often preventable. And a lot of people, like to kind of chat with me and challenge me on talking about how is it preventable. A lot of times you don't know. That is true. A lot of times you don't know, but what you can know and what you can be mindful of and watch with individuals are the warning signs of an individual who may be contemplating suicide. Yes, there are some of those cases out there that, we absolutely did not know. We didn't see it coming. But for a majority of the people, there are some warning signs for suicide. And when we know the warning signs and when we're able to recognize those warning signs, we can help those individuals get help and save lives. So some of the warning signs for suicide include wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves. Some people verbalize and vocalize their thoughts about wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves or wanting to harm themselves. Feeling empty or hopeless or having no reason to live. Making plans or looking for a way to kill themselves, such as searching online. There are, unfortunately, there's a lot of information online, but there's a lot of information out there too about how to kill yourself, and people have access to that stuff online. Stockpiling pills or buying a gun. Having intense feelings of guilt or shame after an event has happened. Feeling like there's no solutions, feeling like you're trapped. Maybe you're unable to bear the emotional pain or the physical pain that has come because of some particular event of your life. Some people say, I don't want to be a burden to other people, or I feel like I'm being a burden to other people, and I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to burden that person any longer. So they may contemplate or attempt suicide. Individuals who use alcohol and drugs more often, feeling extremely anxious or agitated. Maybe you see them withdrawing or isolated from family or friends. There's a whole lot of talk out there. Check on your loved ones, check on your friends, check on your coworkers, especially if they're isolating from them, from you, or not talking to you. Make sure that they're okay. If you see a significant change in eating or sleeping habits, maybe they're showing rage or talking about seeking revenge. Maybe taking greater risk or engaging in activities that could lead to death, such as extremely fast driving. Maybe they're displaying some type of extreme mood swings. Maybe they're, happy one moment, and then you notice that they're completely very distressed or very sad the next moment. Giving away important possessions, saying goodbye to family and friends, or putting their affairs in order, or making a will. And that's probably outside of the norm of preparing for, funeral, preparing for your death. Like some people prepare to die because they know that they're going to take their life, and some people prepare to die because they want to have their affairs in order, because they know that they have a physical health problem, or they know that they're not going to last long. So these are some of the signs and symptoms to look for in individuals who may be contemplating suicide. Some of the risk factors as it relates to suicide is a person who has depression or other mental health disorders or substance use disorders. Depression, I know, is highly linked to suicide and suicidal ideations, as well as some of the other mental health disorders that we didn't necessarily go over. And then also substance abuse disorder or substance use disorder is greatly linked to suicide as well. There's certain medical conditions that people have that are risk factors for suicide. Maybe if they're living with some type of chronic pain and those medical conditions or the chronic pain is not getting any better, a person may contemplate or try to complete. A prior suicide attempt. There's a lot of people who've had prior suicide attempts, and if they have, it makes them more susceptible or more at risk of attempting suicide again. If there's a family history of certain mental health disorders or a family history of suicide, that puts individuals at an increased risk of suicide. If there is a history of family violence or violence within a person's life, that includes physical, domestic, or sexual abuse, that makes a person more susceptible. Having access to guns and firearms in the home are risk factors for people completing suicide. And then I also put individuals who've been recently released from prison or jail, because those individuals find it very hard and very tough to get back into mainstream society and find work and employment, and they kind of feel like they're at their rock bottom, and it can be a very lonely and a very troublesome place. And also individuals who are exposed to other suicide behaviors like celebrities or peers or family members. There's a lot of statistics out there that see the correlation that whenever a celebrity completes suicide, then there's a risk or there's a rise of suicide completions within our country. So how do we eliminate barriers? How do we eliminate barriers as it relates to mental health? How do we eliminate barriers to seeking help? The first thing we need to do is to be able to address stigma. Mental health, we know, has a lot of stigma that surrounds it, and stigma is that set of attitudes and beliefs from the general public that would make a person fear, reject, or avoid receiving mental health services. And y'all have heard those comments, and you've heard the terms, I don't want to go get help because I don't want anybody to think I'm crazy or I'm delusional, all of those negative terms and negative connotations. But stigma has been a long factor that's associated with mental health, and it keeps people from obtaining and seeking mental health problems, and it discourages people from getting mental health problems. So what we have to do as business owners and as loved ones and as people is break the stigma, break the cycle, being able to encourage people to get help and let them know that, you know, you are not crazy. And I hate to use the word crazy, but you're not crazy for wanting to take care of your mental health. You have some mental health challenges. It's important for you to be able to take care of yourself. I understand what other people may view you as, but what's the most important thing is for you to be here and for you to be able to live a productive life and a quality life. And so that means you need to get the help. Mental health services are confidential. A lot of people don't understand that, but mental health professionals are subjected to the same HIPAA laws and HIPAA policies that medical professionals are. So if you come see a therapist, you don't have to necessarily, well, we can't tell anybody that you're coming to see a therapist, but you don't necessarily have to share that with anybody else either. It is your treatment, is your medical treatment, your mental health treatment, and it's confidential. So the first thing we want to do is begin to address the stigma, start talking about it more. That mental health is one of those taboo topics. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to deal with it. But forums like this training begins to break that cycle and break that stigma and make it more common to start talking about how to stay mentally healthy, how to stay mentally well, and what mental illness is. So again, educate yourself, know what to expect after a disaster or a traumatic event. Recognize the signs and symptoms of what mental health problems are. We already said that mental health problems can affect all of our lives across all spectrums of our lives, including personal, family, and work and family life. So know what to expect. Recognize those signs and symptoms. Analyze every area of your life, your personal life, your family life, your work and financial life. Know that, when we're dealing with traumatic events and when we're dealing with disasters, that makes us a little bit more susceptible to developing mental health problems. So know your resources. You must know your resources that are in your local town and your local area. And I will make sure, Ms. Tara, please remind me to send out a list of local resources in your area and how to get access to resources. If you are in business, it would be a great idea to have a list of policies and procedures, or at least resources where your staff and your employees can gain access to mental health clinicians and therapists if they need to. A lot of businesses, a lot of companies have employee assistant programs or employee assistant plans, which allows their workers to receive free counseling sessions. It may be anywhere from 3 to 5 free counseling sessions, but at least that starts the process if an individual is having a mental health problem, how to get help and how to have access to help. Some prevention and intervention methods for a person dealing with a mental health problem is counseling, medication, and peer support groups. South Carolina ranks the letter D as it relates to mental health, which means that we don't do a good job in this state of taking care of our mental health. And a couple of years ago, it probably was about 10 or so more years ago, mental health funding by the federal government and by the state government was cut. So that meant that people had less and less access to mental health services. However, I am happy to report that we're seeing a change in that. We're seeing more access in South Carolina to mental health help. Even those individuals who are living in rural areas, there is access to help. And that help can be in the form of inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment. Insurance, if a person has insurance, they are able to get mental health treatment. If they don't have insurance, they are able to get mental health treatment. There are a number of organizations and agencies that can provide mental health treatment to individuals with no insurance or little to no insurance. And then those individuals who have insurance, there's a lot more resources available to them. But the key and the bottom line is there is help out there no matter where you fall on the spectrum. Here are some of the actual resources that you can use if you are dealing with distress or if you're dealing with suicide. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK, is a very commonly used resource that we have. You can utilize this resource no matter where you are within the United States. If you're thinking about hurting yourself, if you're contemplating or suicide and you need to talk to somebody, that is a line that you can call, and that line is manned and staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some people say, hey, I don't want to talk. I'd rather text it. We're living in a world that we're dealing with a lot of technology now. So we have the crisis text line. If you text hello to 741-741, and text what your concerns are, there's someone manning that line as well, and they'll respond to you and help you get to the appropriate professional help. And then here is a disaster distress helpline. Sometimes people just need to talk and they're dealing with disaster and they may need resources. This is a text line that you can utilize and a website to help with any problems that you may be dealing with as it relates to disaster distress. Military One Source, if you know of any individuals who are in the military community, are part of the military community. Military One Source is an excellent resource to be able to use. Not only do they do mental health counseling as well, face-to-face or by telephone, they have chat and video abilities as well, and they list a whole other type of resources as well besides mental health counseling. So Military One Source is a great tool to use. Telemental health is kicking into full gear right now because of the pandemic. So these are just a few Talkspace and any telemental health providers. You can Google telemental health providers and it will pull up a list of individuals who are providing telemental health. Telemental health works very well. It works just as effectively and just as efficiently as if you were going into the office to talk to someone. But just in case you can't get into the office, just in case you're a little bit reluctant to go into a person's office, look up clinicians in your area that are providing telemental health services. In South Carolina, we are very fortunate to have a community crisis response and intervention team. This team is through the South Carolina Department of Mental Health. CCRI will provide on-site emergency psychiatric screening and assessment to individuals who are experiencing a mental health emergency. They will respond to you within 60 minutes, and their services are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You do not have to be a current client of the Department of Mental Health. You can just be a person who is in need or who is experiencing a crisis. And so when you call them at this toll-free number, they will be able to do an assessment over the phone or come out and do an assessment and get that person to the appropriate professional help that they need. This is broken down into regions within the state of South Carolina. Each region in our state has a person who is assigned to their area and their region. So make sure that you take this information down, and Ms. Tara will make sure we include this as well. Any questions before we talk about the next type of intervention of how to help? No questions, Ms. Tara?
No questions.
Okay, perfect. All right, so voice your concern, right? So how do you voice your concern or ask for help with a person who may be dealing with a mental health problem? First and foremost, set aside some private one-on-one time to that person, with that person, and talk about what you observe. Talk about those signs and symptoms that you see within them and how concerned you are, and ask them how you can assist them. Maybe you want to reassure the individual that there are resources out there that will help. It's always good if you can give them a resource, if you can give them something tangible for them to reach out for services. Make sure the individual know that even though that they're sharing and voicing their concerns to you as professionals, that you will keep their information confidential, and you'll be able to help walk them through the process of getting to the appropriate professional help. And also discuss with the individuals what action that you may be able to assist them with to help obtain assistance. Maybe they want you to make that call with them while they call their local therapist. Maybe they want you to get online with them and try to find some therapists in the area. Anything that you can do to help a person who is experiencing a mental health problem is going to be appreciated. And again, you have to know and you have to understand that people aren't not as willingly to come forth and share that they're experiencing a problem. But if they have that trust within you, and if they know that you're looking out for their best well-being, it's all about rapport and relationship building. So if they know that you love them, you care about them, and you trust them, then it increases their likelihood that they'll open up to you and be able to tell you what's going on so you can help that person get the appropriate professional help. So signs that more help is needed to manage stress. We're living with in a very stressful time right now. So here are some signs that a person may need help in managing their stress, or they may have an emerging mental health problem. They may be disoriented or confused, having difficulty communicating their thoughts. Maybe they have an inability to see or hear things properly. Maybe they're having some active psychosis going on and you're not really aware of it. Maybe they have a limited attention span or difficulty concentrating. Maybe they're irritable or feeling very overly frustrated or becoming very easily frustrated, easily touchy. Maybe they're having some feelings of hopelessness, that negative talking all the time. Nothing seems very positive, or they have nothing very positive to say. You may see that they have very frequent mood swings, or they may be having crying or continuous crying all the time. Maybe they're having some very intense fear of crowds or strangers or being alone, especially now during this pandemic time. Maybe they're having some increased substance use issues that you may see. And this could be, illicit drugs or prescription medication. People abuse prescription medication all the time. Or they may have a worsening of existing medical problems as well. So anybody that you work with in any given level, make sure that you follow up with that person. Make sure that they followed up with whatever resources that you were going to give them or you were helping them access. So follow up is key and important. So here's some tips for coping with traumatic events or disasters. Talk with someone, someone that you trust. Communication, we are relational beings, right? And so communication is very important. Connecting and talking to others who accept and understand your feelings is the best way to help yourself. Maybe you want to reach out to a family member, a trusted family member, maybe a faith leader, and talk about how you're doing. Miss Tara calls me all the time. She knows I'm a clinician, and she calls me all the time, and she said, "Hey, how are you? How are you doing?" Sometimes therapists aren't the best at taking care of themselves, but they should be. I've learned to implement self-care a long time ago, but it makes me feel good to have people call me and say, "Hey, just wanted to check on you, just wanted to see how you were doing." Move your body, get physical, get active. I don't care if that's walking around your house, if you live in a safe neighborhood, or if you live in a neighborhood where you can walk and you can practice social distancing. Move your body, dance in your house. It is so therapeutic. I can't dance. I have no rhythm whatsoever, but I don't mind getting out there dancing because it's good energy and it's good for your body and for your mental health. Meditate and listen to music. And it says time to your breathing. So, because a lot of people listen to music, and music is so therapeutic, music is so soothing, but make sure that you're listening to music that is very calming and soothing and relaxing to you. Meditation is a great way to be able to calm yourself, to deal with that stress and that anxiety. There are several YouTube videos out there. There are several Zoom platforms now of people teaching you how to do mindfulness and meditation. Great tools to use. Promote physical care by eating healthy meals and snacks and making sure that you're getting enough rest and drinking plenty of water. You want to also be able to model these behaviors in your family, with your families and with your loved ones. You definitely, especially during this time, want to promote physical care because people aren't as physically active. So make sure that you're dieting and eating healthy. And when I say dieting, meaning watching what you eat, making sure you're eating those healthy things. Reestablish your routines. Get back to doing the things that you would normally do every day, even if that is modified because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So reestablish your routine. Get back to what you love to do, even if it's a modified routine. Doing something is better than doing nothing at all. Know that it's okay to celebrate your successes. Even during the recovery process, even during this time of uncertainty, there is still room to celebrate. So every day, I want you just to sit down at the end of the day and take a few minutes to think about what you're grateful for, what success that you had during the day. Take some time just to love on yourself and to place yourself in a joyous event. Each and every one of us should be able to find at least one thing throughout the day that we're thankful for, that we're grateful for. Try not to let the thoughts about the disaster, the trauma take over your thinking. And I know it's very easy to do. So again, you want to get involved in activities. You want to be able to make sure that you talk to your family members or your loved ones or your friends, and talk about other things other than the disaster. I know a lot of times people want to talk about what they see on the news, and I'm like, we already see what's on the news. Let's talk about some other things, because there is life even after this pandemic, and life is going on. Talk about some of those things that, or some of those goals that you might want to get involved in. And I also sat down here to speak with a financial advisor or your banker, because I know that because of the pandemic, and anytime there's a disaster or a traumatic event, people's finances are hit hard. And finances are very much attached to our mental health and our mental well-being, especially when there's a lack of resources. So make sure that you know what programs are available out there to you, what assistance is out there to you. You may have to budget, you may have to, get back to budgeting or scale back some things, but speak with a financial advisor. Don't take on that burden by yourself. Speak with someone who you can trust that will help you manage your finances and get you to a comfortable place where you can be. When we're coping with the coronavirus or COVID-19 in particular, we want to definitely take frequent breaks from the news. I tell people to pick one time a day that you're going to watch the news, preferably maybe midday or mid-afternoon and evening. It's hard to watch the news at night and then go to bed. Some of us will have nightmares because of it. So take breaks from the news. Make sure you're monitoring the certain times of day that you're watching it. Again, take care of your body, make time to unwind, set goals and priorities. I can't tell you with how much downtime that I have had during the pandemic, outside of working, that I kind of got refocused and started reprioritizing some of those goals. For some of us, that's dusting off our business plan and looking at where we are within our business and within the goals of our business. Make sure you're taking the time to connect with others and focus on the facts, focus on the factual information that is out there. For children who may be dealing with, or adolescents that may be dealing with the COVID-19 results, be a role model, reassure them that they are safe. Try to keep up with regular routines as much as possible. Let them know that it's okay to feel safe, and we're living in a very concerning time, but this too will pass, and that you're there for them. And if you can't be there for them, then identify a support system for them. And then limit your exposure to the news coverage of the event. So any questions that we have? I know it's a lot of information. Any questions, Ms. Tara?
Waiting to see
All
if anyone
right.
has any questions. I think you've covered all of the questions that was asked earlier.
Perfect. So what are your thoughts? Can we just take a few minutes, Miss Erica, just going to take a few minutes for people to unmute, because I'm tired of the chat feature. I need the people to talk to me now. So just take a few minutes and just kind of share what your thoughts are, or your concerns about the times that we're living in, the pandemic, and as it relates to mental health.
Hi. Thank you
Hey.
for thank you for the information. It was so good. My name is Lawanda, and I think for me, what's coming up is this notion of the how things are being said, how things are being handled in our society today, and how it's being broadcast, not just here in our city, but around the world. And it sends a negative message, which can trigger negative emotions.
Absolutely.
And, it would be nice to see things going over the airwaves that talks in tones that people can grab a hold to, something as simple as like what was said before: when they go high, when they go low, we go high. Just something that would allow somebody, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, be kind. When you're dealing with something that's totally difficult for you, breathe. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, be kind, like just to slow the brain down and then give it a command to do something that is more positive. So one, thank you for all of the information that you shared, Dr. Cummings. It was excellent. I'm very familiar with PTSD as a retired um, um, service member. So, and the suicide rates and all of that, and how important it is to have something that will reframe the experience in life. So thank you.
Thank you, Miss Lawanda. You're absolutely right. I would like to see a lot more positivity, over the airways, which is why I'm asking individuals to limit how much TV and television that they watch. But I do believe that this time too will pass. This is not our only trying time in our country, in our life. We're going to have plenty of more. It's about how we survive, and it's about how we support, each other, and making sure that we stay healthy emotionally and physically and spiritually in the process as well. So thank you. Any more comments or questions? All right, so I'm going to show you. Miss Judy, did you have a question? Okay. So we have some upcoming trainings, and I particularly want to spend a few minutes talking about mental health first aid, because mental health first aid is a 3-year certification for individuals who want to become more proficient in recognizing the signs and symptoms of a person with a emerging mental health problem, or who's in a mental health crisis. And then we go over a 5-step action plan as to how to help someone specifically who has a mental health problem or who's in mental health crisis. Now, mental health first aid is a national evidence-based curriculum. It is very similar to CPR first aid, but we are specifically focusing on mental health and mental health problems. So we have some future trainings coming up as early as July, and we're going to hold those trainings virtually. We will be able to do face-to-face trainings as well, recognizing social distancing. So if that is something that you are interested in, please contact my business manager, training coordinator, Ms. Tara Holman, and we will be able to set that up for your organization, agency, church, or just a group of community members. I love mental health first aid because I think it takes away all of the psychobabble, I call it psychobabble, and really breaks down a lot of these mental health problems that we talked about today in very easy to understand layman terms. So you can be very readily recognize what those signs and symptoms are, and that you will practice how to implement that action plan if a person is experiencing a mental health problem and a mental health crisis. For business owners in particular, there's techniques called critical incident desensitization protocols, and these protocols are to help someone who may be in your business or place of work. Maybe they're having a severe panic attack, or maybe they've been re-traumatized by an event and they're having very significant and active problems in the workplace. These are some techniques that you can do and work with them. We have trainings on that to help calm them down while they're in your workplace. And then we can also customize training seminars and workshops for your facility or organization. I'm very well versed in mental health. Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I think it's time for us to stop being silent about it. I think it's time for us to start talking about it. The more that we talk about it, the more that we educate people to recognize the signs and symptoms, the more we will be able to help individuals. So there's a hand raised, Miss Tara.
Okay. Beatrice.
Sorry, that was by mistake.
Okay. Hey, Beatrice.
Hi.
All right. So I, again, would like to thank Miss Erica and the team over at the Small Business Opportunity Office. You ladies, rock. Y'all are some awesome ladies. Thank you for just reaching out to me and asking me to come on, and my right-hand woman, Miss Tara, for coming on and doing this training. Again, I think you ladies are the epitome of what needs to be happening around our state right now, and that's to begin to start the discussion. I know it's a lot of information, again, because I think I wanted to hit the highlights of the most common mental health problems and practices, but I encourage everyone to look into mental health first aid, especially if you're interested in this topic and you really want to know how to help your coworkers, your employees, your church members, your family members. That is the training that you will want to get and that you will want to receive. So Miss Erica, I guess we're going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, I was just answering an email. Okay, just somebody asked whether or not this presentation will be online. The answer is yes, and we will personally send it out to everybody that's on the call, and also the ones that registered and perhaps didn't get on the call, so they'll still be able to go back and watch it at a later time. So the answer is yes. I know sometimes people ask about the PowerPoint presentation, Dr. Cummings.
Yeah, I can send out a modified version of the PowerPoint presentation, but I definitely want to send a list of resources as well.
Okay. We also have Mr. Brian Davis, who's our Assistant Director for Government and Community Services. He just wanted to say a little bit about, and that's another part of our area. We do the business side, and Brian and his team, they do the community side. So I just want to give Brian a moment to just tell us a little bit about what they do, and then we'll wrap it up and call it a day. Brian?
Erica, thank you. And so my name is Bryant Davis. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Cummings and Tara, thank you guys so much for your presentation. That was phenomenal. Our half of the department, Government and Community Services, we are a proactive outreach arm of the county, and so do a lot of work on doing improved facilitation of community outreach and some administration of the government services that exist at the county, as well as resolution of community issues. And so we do a lot of connection with various boards, councils across the county, a lot of involvement with our churches, and our nonprofits, as well as our business community. Erica and the OSBO ladies do a phenomenal job of connecting with our small businesses. And so just wanted to echo something that Dr. Cummings brought up. And so we're already seeing spikes with suicides, and we're already seeing people that are dealing with substance abuse, child neglect, domestic violence, and sexual assault that are not being reported now due to what's been going on now with COVID-19. And so that'll definitely be something for people to keep their eyes on. And so definitely make sure you're checking with family members and others during this time as well. But I think this was so important. It's something that, you know, in many marginalized communities is not discussed. Just because of the fear of the unknown, what people may think. And so that's very important. Just on behalf of our director, Ms. Chris Kiefer, and we have Kim Humphrey and Charlton Burns that are also on the line as well, that are part of our team as well. We are out in the community hearing these things. And so if there's anything that we can do for any organization or business that's online, we'll be more than happy to do. But just very, very proud of what we've been able to continue to do in the department, and thankful for people like you that are willing to be out and share this message with people so that we can get further educated and continue to make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Cummings, is there anything you wanted to add, or are you good?
No, you ladies are amazing. Thank you for all the participants that came out. I am extremely grateful and thankful for you. I like to talk, so this is a little different with this chat feature. But hopefully we will all be able to get together one day in a one-on-one setting and, get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. So.
Okay, Dr. Cummings, if anybody want to reach out to you, is there an email address, or how would you like, if anybody wanted to reach out to you personally?
Yes, I will put my email address in the chat box. and email is probably the best way to reach me, but I'll put my phone number as well.
Okay, thank you. So while Dr. Cummins is doing that, I just want to say thank you to everybody that came on the chat. Yes, it was a lot of information, but it was great information. And now we can take the information that we learned today and take it back to our organizations. And now hopefully we as individuals can kind of recognize some of the symptoms when it comes to mental illness, even with our staff, our co-workers, even in our homes. So thank you, Dr. Cummins. This was really, really, really good. Thank you, Tara, for moderating. I really appreciate you on this one. Thank you to the team. And once again, thank you to you, our small business owners. If you need to get in contact with us personally, our email address is osbo@richlandcountysc.gov, and our phone number 803-576-1540. And does anybody have any other questions or comments that they want to make before we wrap up? And I'll put our information in the chat box also. Okay, we have Michelle saying thank you to Dr. Cummins and Tara. You ladies are amazing. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if they're not, once again, thank you. Be safe and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, Dr. Cummins, and I will call you personally.
You're gonna call me? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good one.
And again, we'll be online, and we will send out the the recording to everybody. So if you want to go back and replay it again for later. Thank you again.
Thank you.